All right, welcome back to Holy Terrors, the podcast that examines horror through the lens of faith, religion, and spirituality. Now presented by Manor.
Woo!
The Estate of Fright, yes. I'm one of your hosts, Brian Kuiper, and joining me, wearing a fantastic cream-colored cardigan and looking like he just kicked the shit out of a priest. That's right. Pat
like
Brennan. How we do? I changed it. I originally had you dressed as the priest standing on the edge of the cliff.
I was going to put a note in the notes saying, wait, why am I?
I'm going to make you the good guy. I'm going to make you the good guy
Thank
for a
you.
change.
Hey, Brian.
So,
It's nice to see you.
you too. You too. So this is an exciting episode. I'm really looking forward to this. Today we're celebrating the birthday of Lucio Fulci, born June 17th, 1927. 1927, that's kind of cool because two of my grandparents were born that same year. Not that long away from that, so that's kind of cool. And we are very pleased to have an expert on the Maestro join us. He's the author of books including The Vatican versus Horror Movies and Fulci's Inferno, Faith in the Films of a Horror and Giallo Auteur. And he's also the editor of Darkest Margins, 24 essays on liminality and liminal spaces in the horror genre. We are very excited to welcome Matt Rogerson. How are you doing?
Woo! Oh, hello. I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me on, guys.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, ever since I read Vatican versus Horror Movies, I was like, oh, this is someone we need to have on the show. I mean, even if
and
we're
gave
just...
me an outstanding pull quote. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope that it helped maybe do something with the sales of the book because it's a really good book. And
thank you.
I'm really excited to hopefully to have more people reading that book because that was just sort of a corner of horror history that I really didn't know anything about. And to hear that the Vatican actually had a publication dedicated to movies was something that, there you go. There you go.
This one here,
Yeah.
Segnalazioni Cinematografiche.
Yeah. Incredible. And to hear the different takes on these different horror movies, some of them surprisingly positive. And,
right?
Right. But most of them pretty negative, right?
Yeah.
But that book, not just the text, also the illustrations, also by you, really impressive stuff. I'm really fond of that book. And I am going to be reading Fulci's Inferno. I kind of got underwater with some things this school year, so I haven't been able to read that one. But Darkest Margins, also congratulations on that book as well. And that's the most recent publication of the three, right?
Yes, it is. And that's the one I've published under my own imprint, 1428 Publishing. So really, really proud that that's out there as well.
As you should be. I'm a good chunk through it. I'm almost finished. And
awesome.
The collection of essays in there are really impressive. When I think of liminal horror, I think, Skinamarink and shots of people's feet and wainscoting. And yes, sure, but there's so much more than just that little niche in liminality that is explored in that book, and it's very impressive.
You've just captured in a nutshell why we did the book.
Okay.
Because that's what everybody thinks. They think Skinamarink, they think backrooms.
Yes.
And I'm always like, well, yeah, but actually there's a whole lot more to liminality than that. And yeah, luckily I found a bunch of fantastic writers and artists to bring it to life.
Yeah, I'm having a really good time reading that book as well. And so many, and a great collection of perspectives, just really diverse perspectives. And I'm really enjoying that one as well. Okay, so one of the things we do here is we ask our guests to tell us about yourself, and especially if you, as much as you're comfortable with, as it relates to faith and religion, spirituality, things of that nature.
Sure.
Yeah. So anything you want to share with us is great. We'd love to hear.
Yeah, happily. So I grew up in a very typical staunch Roman Catholic family in the north of England. Big family, very typical Roman Catholic matriarch in my grandma. My nana kind of ruled the roost. And so even though my father had lapsed and he didn't bother with church anymore, it was decreed that his children would grow up in the church, and so grow up in the church we did. In fact, where I grew up, my school was both figuratively and literally attached to my parish church. So I was in that church every day of the week, as well as having to go on Sundays. Later in life, I moved away from the church, not from faith, but from the church itself, because I have a number of problems with the Roman Catholic Church historically that have caused me to not want to associate myself with it anymore. It doesn't fit with a lot of my own individual ethics and morals, but I still consider myself to have faith, very much so. And it was the combination of growing up in the Roman Catholic Church and seeing horror films at far too young an age that have kind of developed my passion, in particular for religious horror. I mean, I love all horror. I think all horror is fantastic. I've got a lot of time for every type, shape, size, but religious horror is where it's always been at for me.
Cool.
Yeah, I think you're in good company here among the three of us.
So.
Both on the sort of the lapsed from the institutional side of things, while still having faith, but also, you know, watching horror movies too young and being intrigued by religious horror. So I think I interrupted you, Pat. Did you have something to say?
I was just curious to know, how young were you? Because my mother showed me Nightmare on Elm Street when I was, I think, 7 years old, and thought that. Yeah, she thought that the opening with Freddy making the claw would scare the hell out of me, and I wouldn't want to watch anymore. And then
Watch the rest.
Instead, I was just like, "Oh, awesome!" And then didn't sleep for 6 years.
Right.
Yeah, I was about the same age, so I think 6, 7. I've inadvertently done the kids meme. Sorry. I was 6 or 7 years old. Basically, when I was growing up, my dad was a VHS pirate, and in particular, he was a Video Nasties pirate during the whole Video Nasties controversy in the UK.
So rad.
This story is in the intro to Vatican versus horror movies. So another reason to read that, so you can hear the story in its entirety.
I'll keep it short and sweet on here, but basically we had a bank of VHS recorders in our front room, constantly whirring away. My dad wouldn't let me know what it was he was constantly recording. So one night I decided to come downstairs while my mum and dad were in bed and see for myself. And I think that first night I saw The Evil Dead. And then a few nights after that, Zombie Flesh Eaters, and then a bunch of others. So yeah, 6 or 7 years old.
Rad.
That's
so cool.
Yeah. I think my earliest ones were like Frankenstein and Dracula. I was able to see Universal films. And, you know, I'm still kind of that person. Sort of the centrality of my writing is, for a long time at least, was writing classic horror stuff. And, but, you know, my uncle, bless him, he at least opened my eyes to the more modern stuff. And so I was watching Stephen King movies and things like that by the time I was in 6th grade. We would have sleepovers watching Hellraiser 2 that my friend's mom had picked up from the library for us to watch, which I think is amazing.
Cool library.
Yeah. It still is. It still is that cool of a library too. But speaking of movies, Matt, what did you bring us today?
Okay, so today we're going to be watching and talking about Lucio Fulci's 1972 Giallo, Non si servizia un paperino, otherwise known as Don't Torture a Duckling, otherwise known as Don't Torture Donald Duck, otherwise known as Long Night of Exorcism.
The last one's an interesting...
Yes,
like,
isn't it?
not a lot of exorcism in this, but okay.
And interestingly, that's the title Fulci preferred. So when Fulci would refer to the film, he would call it Long Night of Exorcism. But yeah, so it's an unusual Giallo. Unlike the films of, say, Mario Bava or Dario Argento, these cosmopolitan thrillers played out in familiar cityscapes, Duckling is set in the fictional rural town of Acendura in Italy's south, where several young boys are brutally murdered, and the small-minded, superstitious locals react with ignorance and vengeful violence. A series of outsiders are targeted for the crimes, and then Barbara Boucher's outsider and Thomas Millian's journalist investigates the killings.
Yeah.
It's a very uplifting film.
It is.
Yeah.
You leave this one, with a song in your heart and, smile on your face. But
the song part is true, yeah.
The song is definitely. And also, Don't Torture a Duckling, not just a great title, it's good advice. I always like a movie that in its title just gives you some good advice, and Don't Torture a Duckling was way up there. So anyway, that stupid joke on my part. Matt, when did you come to the film? When was your interest in this peaked?
So this was actually quite late into my Fulci education. So as I mentioned, we had the video nasties thing in the early 80s. During that period, I saw Fulci's horror films, so Zombie Flesh Eaters and then the Gates of Dead triptych. Then everything got banned, and there was very little we could watch for a good 20 years. And it was after the bans were lifted and Vipco, I believe it was, started putting these titles out on VHS and DVD. And once I'd collected all the ones I recognised from my youth, I started then seeing others by the same directors. And Don't Torture a Duckling was a name that just really spoke to me. I was like, that's a very interesting name for a film.
Yeah,
I had no idea about...
Yeah.
I had no idea about Giallo at the time. I had no idea that all of these films have these really long, meandering titles to them. So it really stood out to me. And when I watched it, it was Don't Torture a Duckling that made me realise that Fulci actually had this through line of faith running right the way through his career. He touches upon his church and his faith right from the beginning of his career, right the way through to the end. And it was Don't Torture a Duckling that made me realise that. That would have been in my mid-20s, I'm going to say.
Awesome. Pat, how about you?
I saw it, I think, for the first time probably about 6 years ago. Up until that point, my Fulci education was I'd seen City of the Living Dead with a friend of mine. And that scene where she regurgitates her own innards, I just was like, this is cinema.
Poor girl.
I've seen that scene. I don't think I've seen the whole movie, but I've seen that scene.
I rewatched
the story behind that, though, don't you?
Wasn't she able to regurgitate things on command or something?
Well, Fulci went down to his local butcher shop, just bought a load of entrails, basically, and then went to poor Daniela Doria, said, there you go, stuff all these in your mouth, and then action, spit them back out again.
Oh, God.
How she didn't get chronically ill from that, I do not know.
That's like Divine eating the dog shit, although I guess they did make sure to feed that dog very well before the big day came up. But yeah, and then the pandemic hit, and I had some time on my hands to catch up on some films that I needed to see, and I started just kind of marathoning Fulci films, and Duckling's one of them. And between Duckling and The Beyond, those were kind of the two films that made me really fall in love with him and Italian horror in general too. But I remember being like simultaneously repulsed and kind of enthralled by Duckling, partially because at the time my first child, he was about 2 years old or just about that age, and it just it hit hit hard in that sense, but also the scene where the villagers, you know, take their revenge out on the character's name is now, of course, for leaving my mind.
Macchiara.
Macchiara. I
Yeah.
that scene, both from like a technical standpoint and the content, was like a bolt of lightning hitting me, and yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about that scene in particular
Yeah.
today. But that was my first interaction with this film.
Yeah, I also watched it during lockdown. I actually watched it on June 17th of 2020. And so I have a feeling I was partaking in F this movie's June exploitation, and the 17th is Fulci Day. So obviously. And Patrick Bromley's a big fan of Fulci, so it makes sense for that to be the case. So I watched this on that day, and I'm just going sheer by what Letterboxd is telling me. I gave it 3.5 stars, which is kind of crazy to me. Because watching it again, I'm like, this is so much better than that. I mean,
I saw that, but I didn't want to say anything.
3.5 stars. I know. 3.5 stars is a good rating. It means I liked it, but I'm not sure that it connected with me. Because and there are a couple of reasons for that, frankly, I think. So up to this point, as far as Fulci goes, I had seen Zombie, and actually Zombie was sort of traumatic for me because when I was a kid, or 100 titles to that movie, of course, too. So Zombie 2, or, you know, the sequel to Dawn of the Dead unofficially and things like that. But that picture of the bald zombie with the big teeth and the worm in the eye and stuff.
Yeah, the worms.
Just looking at the VHS cover gave me nightmares. So that was a lot for me. And then the eye trauma scene, oy vey. I mean, yeah, I know. And of course, and I was like, oh, zombies fighting the shark. That's pretty cool. But that movie sort of put me off of Fulci because it was like too scary for me at the time I saw it, I think. And I wasn't that young is the thing, but it sort of freaked me out. So I sort of came back to it a few years later, and I watched New York Ripper, which is another one that's like which is another one that is pretty brutal. Well, not pretty, it's very brutal.
I just watched that for the first time last weekend when my family was away, and like,
sleazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Sleazy film.
Yeah.
Now, I had possibly also seen The Beyond, but I'm not sure on that. But that's about it. That's sort of all of my experience with Fulci. Now, I still feel like I'm an Italian horror novice, but I followed it. I understood it much more on this viewing, and I liked the movie much more. And I think part of that is just I've watched a lot more Giallo. I've watched a lot more just Italian horror in general. I'm a pretty big Mario Bava fan.
Yes,
you know, big enough of a fan. I mean, they even asked me to. I did a couple of commentaries for the Scream Factory thing. So I did one on Black. Yeah, I did one on Black Sunday and I did one on Black Sabbath, because, you know, those are sort of in my wheelhouse as far as classic horror goes. I didn't quite feel ready to take on some of the later films, but those two especially, I think I really get what's going on there, I think.
Yeah. Wonderful films.
Yeah. But also, thanks to the Criterion Channel, they had a whole series of Giallo and Italian horror on, I think, last year, and I just binged as many of them as I could, and that helped a lot. And also, if 1970s Barbara Boucher walked into the room right now, I would gladly ruin my life for her. She could, yeah, you can ruin my life all you want. I'm good. So just thought I'd throw that in. The very inappropriate scene at the beginning of this movie notwithstanding, of course. But we'll get into all of that too. That's a different matter entirely. So anyway, I was thinking about some of the themes while I was watching it, and I don't know if you've looked at these or not. I'm just curious what you think of these, just initial ideas, broad ideas that struck me watching this, and watching Kat Ellinger's got a video essay on the Arrow Blu-ray.
Yes, a wonderful video essay.
Yeah, I was really impressed by that. And I thought it brought out some really interesting talking points for us too.
Yeah, Kat's fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I really admire her work. So Matt, I want to kind of throw this question at you. Can you, what has Fulci been up to this point? And why a movie like this at this point in his career? Why do you think? Do you have thoughts on those things?
Yeah, absolutely. So after he'd graduated from film school, Fulci actually started out in comedies. And for a good 16, 17 years, he was writing and directing very Italian comedies, stuff that really sold well domestically, but was never going to get him a name internationally. And then it was 1969, something happened in Fulci's life that precipitated a really dark turn in his output. And that was when his wife, Maria, unfortunately died from suicide. Fulci fell apart. She was the love of his life, the mother of his children. He had to take a year out from making films. And then when he came back, everything he started to put out was a lot darker. And a lot of the stuff he was putting out then was playing around with criticism of his church. Yeah. And there's two reasons for this. So one is because Fulci's family, as well as being Catholics, they were staunch Marxists. So he was growing up aware that his religion was the same religion that had sided with the fascists during World War II. The Vatican had signed the Concordat with Hitler to make Roman Catholicism the official church of the Reich, and it had done that to insulate itself, to protect itself from Mussolini. Mussolini hated the church, but nonetheless, it had sided with the wrong side, very much the wrong side during that time period. So there was a lot of cynicism towards the church anyway. But then, when Fulci's wife passed, of course, according to Roman Catholic doctrine, at least at the time, it's changed. The stance has changed since. If you die from suicide, that's it. That's a mortal sin. It completely severs your relationship with God, and you've got no chance of ever going to heaven in the church's eyes. So it was almost like losing his wife twice. He'd lost her in life, and he knew he would never be reunited with her again. And he really started to hit out at both the church and then later his feelings about faith and the afterlife. And this was one of the first movies where he did that.
Yeah. Man. Okay. I found Fulci's career somewhat interesting, where he started out in such a different place, and to come to this, it's really interesting. Pat, what were you gonna?
I was just gonna say, honestly, like, I remember hearing about that for the first time after watching, I think around the same time that I saw Duckling, that Fulci for Fake documentary that came out a while ago.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the things that I found really attractive about Fulci, was the change in gears in his career, but then also like, a tragic backstory is always gonna get me get me on your side. And he seems like someone who is very much characterized by his contradictions.
Oh, incredibly so. A very complex man, very much characterized by his contradictions, and that would show in various interviews he gave over the years, because he would say one thing to one interviewer and then say exactly the opposite to another interviewer a year or two later. And I think that was fruit born from his internal, what's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, like the turmoil or contradictions.
Yeah, his internal turmoil, his internal doubt, and just the feelings he was fighting deep inside
Sure.
are very, very much reflected in who he became on the outside.
I think too that the image that some of his like coworkers and friends painted of him, of this man who was so precise with his work and so dedicated to it, but then with his like life outside of work just being shambles. Like I remember there was
Yeah.
someone who did costume design for him needed to like help him figure out what he was going to wear or something like that. Like he could barely even dress himself without
Yeah.
I that's so endearing to me.
Very much so. As a filmmaker, he was the consummate professional. Not enough people know that Fulci was classically trained. He came through the same film school that brought us the neo-realists and the great Italian satirists. He was trained by Luciano Visconti, by Federico Fellini, Roberto Rossellini. And everyone who works with him on set said he was the consummate filmmaker. He arrived on set knowing exactly what to do about every tiny, precise little detail. But yeah, outside in his home life, especially after the passing of Maria, he was an absolute shambles.
I could see some of that professionalism, in this picture, just the way it's shot and put together. I mean, for some reason, I get images in my head with certain Italian horror filmmakers like Artifice, like it looks like it's on a very stage bound. This doesn't look that way. It's got this it reminds me weirdly, some of the shots of the city up the hill, up the mountainside and everything reminded me of like Pasolini's Passion of St. Matthew, where you have this this old city up here, but then to insert a shot of the very modern house and stuff like that, for example. It struck me as another theme of the movie I wanted to talk about, which was that modernity and the sort of the ancient and modern clashing. And there's kind of this collision of folk horror and religious horror, because you have stuff from the ground and the earth and the a witch, so to speak, and but then you also have sort of the modern religion kind of coming up against that, and then in the townspeople there's the combination of the they're sort of steeped in the current religious tradition, but it's underlined by all this superstition.
Yes, very much so. Sorry, go on, Pat.
I was just getting, and you've got like kind of the rural and the metropolitan, and
exactly.
Yeah. So one thing Fulci wanted to do was very much subvert the rules of the Giallo. So putting it somewhere rural, putting it in Italy South, which is a place very much forgotten by the rest of the country and in a lot of people's view, the rest of the world. And Fulci wanted to show and he depicts it with that giant concrete autostrada that cuts a swath through the Green Mountains, and all these cars full of families, presumably holidaymakers going off on the holidays. No idea that this little town in the hills even exists, because this giant autostrada has been built to ferry people from whatever city they live in to whatever beach they want to go to, and just ignore the rural element. And Fulci really wanted to bring the rural South to people's attention. And in terms of the religious aspects, that's actually something that has a very long history in Italy. It's now referred to as Benedicaria, which it means way of blessing. And basically it describes how the old traditional folk religions that existed in Italy before the Romans brought Catholicism back from the Holy Land kind of made uneasy bedfellows for a very long period of time, where people accepted this new religion of Roman Catholicism, but also still had a lot of faith in the old ways. And so you would get a lot of people who were referred to as strega or witches, because they used lotions and potions and salves to help with various ailments and what have you, and they believed in some things that conflicted very much with what the Roman Catholic Church taught, But they still managed to sit side by side for many years, and Fulci wanted to show what happens when this comes to a head and they actually butt heads and spill over.
Yeah. Which I find, interesting because like Bergman explored that, I think, in The Virgin Spring really thoroughly.
Yeah.
The transition from this ancient Norse paganism to the new, I mean, it was Catholicism pretty much internationally at that time. So it was, happening at the same time, and the Max von Sydow character having to deal with sort of both sides of that at the same time. There's another example I had. I think the Europeans do it better than the Americans do on that front. Though there are some interesting, with I can't think of of a good American example of that, but there are a lot of European films that deal with that. I mean, The Wicker Man itself, I think is another good example. I mean, where you have these two coinciding together. So yeah, it's one of my favorite themes in religious horror, is sort of that collision between the ancient and the modern, and the old world, ancient, semi-forgotten religions, and the new kid on the block that is working to wipe everything out. I mean, even Sinners deals with that.
Yeah, absolutely it does.
In a really powerful way. So I think what Pat was talking about with the beating of the woman in the middle of the movie is sort of taking this theme, and then the theme about another one I want to bring up about the way the culture views women, and then also about violence, and just all of those things really culminate in the middle of the film rather than at the end. And I think that is an interesting and fascinating element of the film. So this is an idea that sort of really was brought out because of Kat Ellinger. So I want to give her credit for all of what I'm going to say in
Props
the next.
To Kat. We love you, Kat.
Yeah, absolutely. Of all I'm going to say in the next couple minutes here, she brings the idea of the woman as the temptress being a recurring theme in this movie. And that ties into the Christian belief that Eve, and frankly, I think this is a wrong-headed belief. It doesn't make any sense to me why Christians still blame Eve or whatever for bringing sin into the world, because Adam was there too. I mean, this was not anyway. So
takes two to tango, baby.
Yeah.
So was the devil.
And the devil, right? Indeed, and God.
Yeah, let's not play down their roles.
Yeah, exactly. But the idea that women brought about the fall of mankind is sort of a long-standing, very traditional version of that belief about original sin. And so I think that there's an element of, you have an Eve type character, and then you have like a Lilith type character, which of course is not in the Bible, but I mean is in sort of the discussion, if you will. And then you have almost the Mary type character, who's sort of like the virtuous mothers. There are a couple of them in this movie. So just these depictions of women, I think, are really fascinating in this movie as well.
I had a thought too about because I know we're going to get into the I called it that scene. To me, it's the
I'm going to save what I was going to say about it until we talk about that scene, but go ahead. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, so I rewatching that scene, how do I say this? How much of it is Fulci's own kind of masculinity being projected onto, like, oh, this would be an awesome thing to go through as a kid. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like the idea that I'm not sure if I'm making any sense.
Are we talking about the scene when Barbara Boucher's Billy Bollocks on the lounger when the young lad comes in?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's where we're at.
It feels like a male fantasy gone horribly awry to me.
There could very well be elements of that. I've always taken it as being born from, again, Fulci's inner contradictions, because he's presenting Barbara Boucher in a way that... Are we all right to spoil this film, by the way? I mean, people have had since 1972. The priest
we've
did it.
got to. We can't discuss it without spoiling it.
Yeah.
And the reason the priest was killing these children was because he wanted to gain them passage to heaven before they were corrupted by the vices of the material world, and in particular sexual vices from immoral women. And so Fulci's presented Barbara Boucher in such a way that actually she's proving the priest's point.
Right.
Because she does this, she lies there very provocatively in front of this boy at the start, completely naked. And he's like, what, 10, 11 years old? Maybe 12, 13, possibly. Too young to be in a room with a naked adult woman stranger, for sure. But then also there's later scenes, like there's one where she asks a boy to help her fix a car and offers to pay him with a kiss.
Right.
And she's very provocative with these kids. And it turns out that she has a history of... She's originally from that town, but she was cast out, went to live in the cosmopolitan cities and then came back. So she is this corrupting influence as far as the priest is concerned. And as far as what we see on screen, she's definitely more than a little bit risque. And part of it is also goes back to the whole modernity versus the old, and the modern Italian North versus the rural Italian South. She's coming from this supposedly much more permissive culture, where she's been living in the North all these years, and she's bringing it back to the rural South, where it's absolutely horrendous. It really is shown up for being rather too permissive. It will not surprise you to learn that Fulci got in a lot of trouble for that scene.
I bet.
Fulci ended up in court over that scene.
Really?
Ironically enough, he was taken to court on he was taken to court on charges of child abuse on a film that was trying to expose child abuse.
Right. Yeah.
Now, he'd filmed it with basically a short adult actor. So the child and naked Barbara Boucher were never in the same room together. There was a short adult actor.
You can kind of see that in the edit too.
Yeah.
You can tell that it's her and him, and they weren't actually in the same room.
Yeah, and then they shot the kid at a different time. They just did over-shoulder shots with this short adult actor to make sure that no real harm or overexposure happened to anyone on the set. But nonetheless, Fulci was taken to court, more than likely off the back of his last couple of movies, where he had been very, very provocative, and he had seriously pissed off both the church and the state, particularly with his film earlier that year, The Eroticist, where he had essentially laid bare what turned out to be a real-life cabal, a real-life Italian deep state, where the members of the church, members of the government, openly fascist businessmen, mafioso, and others were all trying to operate the government from within. So he was getting a lot of pushback, and it looked as though people were trying to find any excuse to haul him over the coals and get him in court. Same sort of thing that happened to Pasolini, although it happened a lot more with Pasolini. I think he was in court something like 34 times over the course of his career. So yeah, it really is a very controversial scene. It's almost a contradiction, because you're presenting this priest as the true evil, and of course he is the true evil because he's worried about these kids being corrupted by sex, but he's doing something much worse. He's murdering them. He's murdering them, and we must not forget that. That is a far greater sin than seeing a pair of boobs. But yeah, it's very, very contradictory, and it really does show Barbara Boucher's character as this wicked temptress.
Right.
I was wondering, so I remember reading that Fulci had like a really soft spot for children, and that especially his daughters, he kind of lived for them after the death of his wife. And you see in later films, the kid doesn't necessarily get the worst things in the world happening to them like the other characters. Right. So I'm just wondering with this film, do you know if was this a difficult process for him making it because of all the child killing?
I imagine it must have been. I can only imagine because there's not a great deal documented about it. But I do know that at the time, Fulci and a number of others were shockingly aware of what was going on in real life, which was systemic child abuse by members of the clergy and systemic cover-ups by the Vatican. And he wanted to speak out about it. Now, he had to be very careful about the way he did it. As I said, he'd already gotten in a lot of trouble with his last couple of films. And he didn't want to be getting the full weight of the Vatican on him again. So he had to change it. He couldn't have these children being sexually molested or abused by a priest. So murder was the next biggest thing. As far as I'm aware, he kept the kids away from any scenes where anything particularly nasty was going on, and he was very protective of the child actors in the film, as is shown by the scene that we've just been talking about. He made sure that as much as if you were a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid, you'd be bragging to all your mates, wouldn't you? That you just seen Barbara Boucher naked.
I mean, like I said, I mean, she's nice to look at.
She's a very attractive woman and an incredible actress.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the performance that she gives in this movie, I mean, really, the female actors in particular in this are so good. And I'm it's incredible stuff. I want to address really quickly, because this is another thing that's brought up with Kat Ellinger's piece, is the accusations of misogyny that are leveled at Fulci from time to time.
I mean, I will say this. There have been accusations leveled at Fulci of chauvinism and misogyny. As a man, I'm not the right person to speak on this.
Right. Yeah.
All I can say is what I know to be a fact is Fulci was a filmmaker who hated actors. He couldn't stand working with actors. He'd rather not have them if he could possibly get around it. And very often he took his frustrations out on his actors. Now, he took his frustrations out on his women actors more than he did the men. Likely because the men would probably turn around and knock him out.
Yeah.
And so he thought he could get away with it. But then there were women actors who he got on incredibly well with. Catriona MacColl, who's in all three of the Gates of Hell movies. She's only ever had great things to say about him and her. Florinda Balkan, who plays Machiara in this one, and also is in Lizard in a Woman's Skin, only ever had good things to say about him. Others, not so much. Adrienne LaRussa, who was in Beatrice Cenci, really butted heads with him. There's a rumour that I found online, but I've never been able to find enough evidence to back it up. I've only ever seen it's on a Reddit subthread, that when Fulci was shooting Operazione San Pietro in 1966, he apparently tried to sneak into one of the actresses' bed one night. I've only ever seen it mentioned in this Reddit thread. I've never heard it spoken about by anyone else or seen it elsewhere, so I can't comment on it until I've seen something a bit more concrete. But there's definitely accusations, and I'm not going to say one way or the other, because at the end of the day, I'm a man. It's not for me to decree on whether he was or he wasn't.
For sure. And if to dive into that again, I would just point people to that, to Kat Ellinger, who, as a woman, is able to speak to it, I think, a little bit more better than we can. So anyway, didn't mean to open the can of worms there, but I just thought we'd mention it because that has been out there in the air about Fulci.
It's all food for interesting discussion, and I think there's never any reason to gloss over any part of Fulci or any filmmaker's career and life. Fulci is one of my two favorite filmmakers in all the world, but I will be the first person to say that he had his downsides as well.
Oh, sure. And, as someone who's enjoyed the films of Alfred Hitchcock, I can relate. Yeah. I mean, we live in a world of imperfect people for sure. So
the other men.
Many of them men, yes, exactly. For sure.
Actually, I think I saw an interview once or a clip of an interview where he was talking about how he was like, I was raised by women, I raised two girls myself. Of course I'm misogynistic. So I don't know if that's him commenting on, I don't know, just toxic masculinity
that's
before.
About his contradictions. He was raised by women. His father had absconded before he was even born. All the other men in his family died early, so he was raised by his mother, his grandmother, and his aunts. So it was women that installed all his values in him. His children, he had two daughters, and yet there's this sense of him being a misogynist, or at the very least a chauvinist in later life. Another Fulci contradiction.
The rock of faith has felt more like sand shifting beneath my feet. On the one hand, I have always been told that doubting is not a sin. On the other, I fear that I have violated the scripture. I have done worse. I have done neither. But now, I feel that I need to come clean. The impetus for all of this is a work of art, a piece of film so profound that I am not reluctant to call it a masterpiece. Mike Flanagan's Midnight Mass. Read Angels of Light, Hypocrites, Prophets, and Prodigals at the Midnight Mass, written by Holy Terror's co-host Brian Kuiper, an essay that filmmaker Mike Flanagan called remarkable, profound, and moving, a terrific piece. Available on Manor Vellum at manorvellum.com. That's MANORVELLUM.com. On Manor Vellum, you'll also discover Kuiper's ongoing series, Faces of Frankenstein, where he examines film adaptations of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, both direct and indirect versions throughout history. While you're there, check out Holy Terror's co-host Pat Brennan's series, Voices from the Twilight Zone, covering Rod Serling's timeless creation in its multiple incarnations. And if you enjoy reading Manor Vellum, then you'll enjoy reading Manor's A State of Fright each month, where you'll discover true fears, read new exclusive horror fiction, and get Manor's monthly calendar sent directly to your email inbox. Subscription is free at manorhq.com/EOF. That's manorhq.com/EOF. From Manor, your residence of horror.
Interesting. It's really interesting. One more thing I think that is brought up a lot in this film, in big and small ways, is violence and the desensitization to it. In this film, it seems like Fulci has similar motives to like Wes Craven in The Last House on the Left. He's showing violence as it is, and in all its sort of horror and horribleness, and to make the audience sort of sit in the discomfort of it all.
It does feel kind of, yeah, it's the opposite of the 2-second, strangulation where the person just drops dead, or it shows the lengths you have to go to snuff out a life, and how ugly that can be.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd fully agree, although I know it was Wes Craven's intention. I don't know if I'd fully agree about Last House on the Left, because we've since seen clips of interviews with David Hess where he said that basically that poor girl didn't know what they were going to do. And the male actors had decided in between them what they were going to do, and it was all a surprise to her when action was shouted. But certainly in Fulci's case, so that central scene where Machiara is beaten to death by the vigilante group who think they're getting mob justice, but of course it's not justice, was very much him showing the senselessness and evil of male violence upon women, and how easily it happens.
Yes. Yeah. So it seems to me like those major themes sort of all come together in the beating. That's just, it's a tough scene. It's really challenging.
Destroying scene. And it happens at the exact midpoint of the film as well. And to this character who, to me, Machiara is the beating heart of the film. The film, to me, is about her first and foremost, and her plight, as much as it is what's happening to these kids. And then she gets brutally beaten and killed at the halfway point, and you just left there to go, well, what next? With that kind of really sunken feeling in your chest. It's incredibly effective, and more than once I've shed a tear when she's climbing up the hill at the end, and the cars are going past on the autostrada, and they don't even know she's there, let alone what's happened to her.
And which brings about the idea for me of the desensitization to violence, because there's an earlier scene, the parents, Michele's parents, are watching a Western on TV, and it's a shootout, and they're yawning.
They're like, you should get the boy, he'd love this.
Right. And so the people in the cars just driving by and seeing this battered, bloody woman clearly in need of help, and they just drive by.
Well, and I think too there's that idea of like sometimes the way that the quote-unquote people from the city see the challenges of people in rural areas, as it kind of just being like feeling as if your plight is being tossed aside or kind of brushed off because, well, you're just from the country, so
who
gives a shit? Which I think is like one of the reasons why this film still feels so relevant, considering like the kind of cultural economic discussions that are going on today.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly with that.
Okay, so I mean, we've kind of found our way there sort of naturally, but actually looking at the movie itself and going through some of these things that struck us, again, I mean, that new world versus old world, there's so much throughout from beginning to end. I mean, in the opening credits, that's one of the things that really sort of, it's almost jarring, because so much of what is depicted is sort of these old stone crumbling homes and the big church, and then there's Patrizia's very modern home, just a shot of it inserted in the middle of that opening credit sequence, and then of course the highway as well. But that is such a key element of the whole film, and so beautifully rendered just right away in that opening sequence.
I have a question.
For sure, Sorry, go ahead.
The ladies that are coming in from the city, those were prostitutes, right?
Yep.
So it's interesting how you have like the rural men calling in the prostitutes from the city, and you've got these two worlds kind of meeting and providing a service, as it were. Yeah.
And I suppose they're calling them in from the city because they hope to not get found out. If
Yeah.
they were drawing upon the services of locals, then it would be all around the village in no time
sure.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
Of course, it's all around the village in no time whatsoever anyway, because
Yeah.
the kids are watching them.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, and the key themes, are all set up right in that sequence. Frankly, I mean, you see,
Yeah.
the boys in the church, and they're praying under like a grim reaper. There's that just skeleton on the wall, and then immediately going outside and, hey, let's get some cigarettes, and, oh, hey, I hear that a couple of the locals are hooking up with some sex workers, let's go spy on them. And then he's a peeping Tom, and just sort of the othering of that particular character
Yeah.
as well. It's so just, it's immediately the whole thematic idea of the movie is set up so quickly, and so much so you don't even realize that it is, I think, if on a first time watch, at least, even a second time watch, because I couldn't remember the motives of the priest when I first
Yeah,
watched
very
this.
much so. And I think the whole thing about the rural versus the modern, that really carried over in Italy at the time of the film's release, because if you look at the way Fulci shot Don't Torture a Duckling, it's very different to the way he shot the vast majority of his other movies. He utilised a neo-realist style. He went back to his roots in filmmaking school, and he utilised this very neo-realist filming style, this almost documentarian style, to set it apart from his usual genre films. And the vast majority of neorealist films, they were about that. They were about the working classes. They were about the clashes between the modern and the old. And then, you've got these corrupting influences on the children, seen with the prostitutes, and then seen with Barbara Boucher as well, that are kind of proving the priest's point, which it always sits uncomfortably with me, that
Sure, but it adds a
I get why he was
complexity
doing
to
it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I get why he was doing it. I think there are other ways you could do that. But hey, I'm not a filmmaker. But yeah, it was all very much deliberate on his part. I think Don't Torture a Duckling is one of the films that really shows to Fulci's critics that actually no, Fulci knows what he's doing.
Yes.
Fulci's an accomplished filmmaker and an accomplished storyteller.
Absolutely. Well, and the fact that the very first thing you see is the skeleton, the tiny skeleton of
Machiara's
baby. And it's like, ooh, what is that? What's going on with that? And it's so moving. I mean, she just wants these kids to stay away from her baby's final resting place.
Yeah.
And there's the indications that the child might have been deformed or something of that nature. And it's so heartbreaking. I mean, her whole story, yes, she's using these wax dolls and things, and she genuinely feels that she's the one who killed them, I think. And
she does, for sure.
And just through her ritual, because she believes so powerfully in that. And gosh, just the othering of her in general. I mean, she tries to go into the church too, and then that shot of her just running away at the beginning, at the end of that first section. Oh, man, it's I don't know. I'm getting a little bit of goosebumps just thinking about it.
Or when she's walking through the town and all the old ladies are spitting when she goes by. And
yeah.
They do like to do that, though. I've had that happen to me.
Really?
Walking around Milan. Yeah, walking around Milan. I've had old Italian nonnas looking at me, looking me tattoos up and down, and then going,
oh no.
I just get the kids being pulled away from me. Like, get them away from that awful man.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, and also a contrast, then you have Patrizia. Now she's sort of the modern woman. She's the spirit of the 60s kind of woman, I guess you would say, where there's a lot of freedom and modernity in her. But she's presented to me in that scene that we've talked about a couple times. she's presented as like Eve, I think, very directly. Because not only is she naked, right, the orange juice, the fruit, and sort of this offering of the forbidden to the innocent. That's how I interpreted the sequence. I interpreted this as very much being putting her forward as the Eve character in this particular film. I don't know what anyone thinks of that thought.
I kind of saw her almost as the apple
interesting.
itself, to be honest, because it's
Sure.
like the
She is the forbidden fruit. Yeah.
Well, like, yeah, and the knowledge, that comes with that kind of crossing that archway for the first time growing up,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
how you can't really go back through it again. It's
Oh yeah, sure. And I think she's sort of just teasing him. I mean, I don't think she has any intentions of any sort, but she's also put a robe on, lady. I mean, it's a little kid in the room, but
I do love that the kid is
I'm
like,
all for freeing the nipple, but
yeah, I mean,
there are limits. There are limits.
There are limits. Yeah,
I do love that the kid is like, oh, I've slept with so many people I can't even remember how many it was. Like, it's such a true to life dumb thing that a kid's going to say.
Sure. At first, I watching it, because like I said, it'd been a while since I'd seen it. I was like, why is this here? But then when the motives of the priest are revealed, that he's trying to protect these young boys' innocence in his own misguided way, and it's obviously very misguided way.
By murdering them.
Yeah, by murdering them. It becomes a much more necessary sequence at that point, I think. And so when I read it in that way, I didn't have the same sort of oogie feelings about it, besides, like we've said. I think we've all made it pretty clear. Yeah, it's wrong for her to do what she does. But I think it's also, in the world of the film, it's underscoring the entire point of the movie, I think, and the entire, and so it makes that scene become kind of vital to the whole tapestry of the thing. So anyway, that's my read. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in on that.
Just to agree with you, really. I mean, there's definitely a case of every significant woman in the film is othered or otherwise marginalized, and is either the subject of suspicion or, unfortunately, in Machiara's case, is the subject of horrific violence. There's also an element that sits outside of Patrizia because she is so modern, and one of the underlying themes of the film is about old world superstition versus new world Catholicism. And you've got everyone in this town is marginalizing and othering and killing people because of superstition and because of the old ways, when in actual fact it's the modern ways that's doing the real damage. It's the priest, it's the Roman Catholic priest. So Patricia kind of sits outside of that narrative, but at the same time, it's vital to showing Don Alberto's motivations.
I think Fulci does something interesting too, where like every woman character is kind of a red herring, and he manipulates us into seeing each woman as a suspect and being distrustful of them. Right up until like, you think at the last moment that, well, okay, it's the priest's mother who is the one who's killing the kids, and it's
yeah. I think we need to discuss the central scene thoroughly. I mean, when Machiara is, am I saying that name right? Machiara. Thank you. Sorry about that. When Machiara she's essentially legally let off the hook.
Yeah.
But then immediately we have this group of vigilantes trying to protect their town, who just know that she's the one, who just know that she's guilty.
Well, I think a few of the people in that crowd are the parents too, the fathers of
Yeah, they are. They're the fathers of the dead children, the dead boys.
Yes, they take it upon themselves, though, to very brutal. I mean, this is the most brutal sequence by far in the film. I mean, the
Yeah.
murders of the children are not really even shown. But this sequence is not just violent, but it's like protracted. It's long and
Mhm.
it's thorough and disturbing, and your heart breaks just every moment that it's happening. Just
Fun stuff.
really powerful stuff. Yeah.
Especially with that song playing over the top of it.
Yeah.
I had that song stuck in my head all bloody week, and I'm not complaining really, but that's one of the reasons why I decided to look up the lyrics. So I was like, okay, I gotta know what this is saying, and then reading the lyrics, it's like, oh, ooh, this adds a little ickiness, extra ickiness to this.
Yeah. So what are the lyrics sort of in a nutshell?
Basically, this woman who's saying like this relationship was this hurt me. You were a piece of shit to me. I should have known better than to continue with this, but still,
Okay.
I think about you, even though I hate
Oh,
that I think
wow.
about you. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's Onella Vanoni, incredibly popular Italian singer, folk pop singer from across various decades, with the music done by the incomparable Risortolani, he of Mondocane and various other fantastic scores.
Yeah.
Cannibal Holocaust as well, I think, is one of his.
Sure.
Which, whatever you think of the movie, the score for it is
Yeah.
absolutely wonderful.
For sure.
And there's a few potential reasons for why they chose that. I can see things it could represent. So it could represent Machiara's feelings about the old warlock, who she's clearly
Right.
previously had a relationship of some sort with. We don't know whether there was voluntary sexual activity, or it's actually heavily implied that he quite possibly raped her. And that was one of the reasons why he insisted that her resultant child was the devil's child and had to be murdered.
Right.
It could also be Fulci's commentary on his faith, which he once loved, and now looks back and feels shame for forever having been in the church because he sees it for what it is. Those are guesses on my part.
A lot of it is just how does it make you feel?
Yeah.
With this juxtaposition of this sort of beautiful song and this horrendous violence happening at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so powerful.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing, now, you said that Fulci's preferred title for this was what, The Long Night of Exorcisms?
Yeah.
Do you think that relates to her seizure? The moment where she, whether it's epilepsy or just sort of a overwhelming moment for her where she falls to the ground in the police station, there's sort of the implication that some people would think at least that she's possessed by the devil in a moment like that.
Yes, absolutely. And again, that would have been something that would have been immediately obvious to Italian audiences at the time.
Sure.
Machiara, the character, is based on the character of Purif from a film called Il Demonio in 1963
Yeah.
by Brunello
Great
Rondi.
film. Great film.
Yeah. And she is very much a witch. She is accused of being possessed by the devil. There is an exorcism in that film. There's the precursor to the spider walk from The Exorcist happens in that film. And Machiara is very much based on the character of Purif in a way that would have been obvious to Italian audiences immediately. And so, yeah, I think it very much relates to Machiara and the suspicion that she's possessed by the devil. We've had that suspicion borne out in what the old warlock said about her child, that her child was the devil's child and had to be killed. And also, in her seizure, that almost looks like something out of The Exorcist.
Sure. And one of the things that I noticed with the baby's skeleton,
Mm-hmm.
and when the warlock says it's the child of the devil, damned if that baby skeleton doesn't look just like the one in The Omen that's in the grave.
Oh!
Which there's no way I can know if Richard Donner or anyone saw this film before making The Omen.
I mean, every director that was part of the new Hollywood movement was influenced in some way, shape, or form by two movements from Europe, by neorealism and the French Nouvelle Vague. So certainly he'll have seen a hell of a lot of Italian cinema. Sure. And like I said, when it was released, a lot of critics considered Don't Torture a Duckling to be a neorealist film, first and foremost, before it's a Giallo.
Wow, that's interesting because, I think neorealism, I think, the Bicycle Thieves and things of that nature. But yeah, I see that. I definitely see that relation, that correlation there. And then just put into this genre spot, Wow, that's really, I love that.
Can I see it? Can I grab it? Yes, 1 second. There's a book that was released towards the end of last year, start of this year, all about Don't Torture a Duckling. This was released by a publishing house that is run by the owners of a fantastic store in Milan called Bloodbuster, which does all kinds of DVDs and Blu-rays and books and all sorts. This is their own imprint, and it's in this book that I learned about how the film was critically received in Italy at the time of its release. So I've literally only just learned that Italian critics at the time were comparing this to neorealism films rather than to, say, the films of Dario Argento or Mario Bava and the like.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Cool. I love that.
That's get my hands on that.
Yeah, that's really cool. Now, Pat, you pose a really good question in the notes here.
Oh, yes. How do you think the village will react to the revelation that Father Alberto was the killer?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, well, how would I react? How would a modern Roman Catholic congregation act? And I'm thinking about when I was a kid, and in our area, unfortunately, there was a massive child abuse scandal going on that involved our local politician, a chap by the name of Cyril Smith, and our local priest as well. And when the news came out, everybody was shocked and everybody was appalled, but it all felt slightly performative because underneath, everybody kind of already knew. Yeah. And there was this element that people understood that there was something going on, but were too scared to point the finger in that direction. And I wonder if something similar might have happened in the village of Vatican, where they might have been very shocked and outraged on the surface, but beneath that, there's probably an idea that a lot of them already knew. They just didn't want to point the finger at the church.
Yeah.
Because the church was incredibly powerful still at that time. Incredibly powerful.
Yeah. So one of the things I thought about pairing with this movie that I don't think I will because it's too dark, but related to that kind of idea, I watched a documentary from 2006 called Deliver Us from Evil, which is one of the most disturbing films I have ever seen. And part of that idea of that movie is that people kind of knew, or especially the church really knew what was going on, and they just kept moving the guy around.
Yep.
And I don't even know how to express the sort of heartbreak and anger I feel about those sorts of things. And I do kind of wonder if that would be the case, that, Don Alberto, okay, makes sense. He was with those kids all the time, And, his motives are sort of like, oh, he tried to do the right thing. In his own mind, in his own twisted version, his motives were sound, but he's like trying to save them from hell.
That's what I was going to say. I wonder how many people would make excuses for his behavior to justify. Yeah. Because if they're able to justify it, then especially the fathers who have just killed someone, like, if they're able to justify what he did, then yeah, that's.
I'll say this: I bet the fathers didn't go after him.
Yeah.
But if he hadn't have died at the end, if they'd have brought him to justice and he hadn't fallen off the cliff and died, I bet the fathers wouldn't have gone after him the way they went after Machiara.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely not. I think that's one of the underlying points of the movie as well. Okay, I'm going to read a quote from Kat Ellinger just because it's too good to pass up. And I think it relates to this. It says, this is a direct quote from her essay. It says, throughout Don't Torture a Duckling, women are seen as a sexual threat and corruptible influence. This is the reason which Don Alberto gives for killing the boys. He ties their sin to sexual awakening and attempts to keep them in a state of perpetual childhood, playing football rather than looking at girls, because girls will lure them away from the church until they stop visiting and get lost to sin. So that's his motive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I think, an extension of the view that the people in this town have of most women, particularly these othered women, particularly Patrizia, particularly, and I'm going to say her name wrong again. I'm sorry. Thank you, Machiara. I think that just underscores for me what I think the movie is getting at more than anything is just the patriarchy and the systems of not just the church, but also sort of the systems of their superstitions as well are just kind of patriarchal. And the women are not going to be the ones in power in any situation here. And so, yes, Don Alberto does get his comeuppance at the end, but it also feels sort of like an easy way out, as much as smashing his face on. I love that sequence, by the way. That just the way that's all shot of him hitting every rock on the way down the cliff.
Yeah. The literal explosions happening,
and like the explosions and stuff. That's one of the most memorable effects of the film. But then his motives are revealed with each hit, on the way down the cliff. But still, even with all that sort of gruesome violence in his death, it still feels like he gets off a little bit to me. But I am curious what you guys think. Do you think it's not an easy way out, obviously painful way to die, but still, in comparison to, I don't know, his crimes and sort of the way that the women are punished in this film, to me, it feels like he kind of gets off easy in comparison.
Well, and the parish is just going to get another priest, and who knows? I'm not going to say that every single priest is a monster, but I mean, the same mistakes are going to be made anyway. Like the same kind of that same patriarchal system is still intact at the end, and
and also even in that sense, I mean, in my recollection, he had thrown himself off the cliff. In which case, committing suicide, he would have ended up in hell, right? And sort of there. But he's not. He's thrown. He's killed. It's not his fault. He falls off the cliff. So essentially, he dies, and by his own theology, at least, goes to heaven. Perhaps. But then he did commit murder, so maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he'll probably believe that he's going that way. Hopefully he's not, because he's committed those
these horrible crimes, and he's responsible for the brutal murder of other people too, of another person too.
Yeah, he's got Machiara's blood on his hands as well.
Absolutely, he does.
And this is all what we've known or seen that he's done. I mean, if you're able to get yourself to a point where you can justify killing children, what else has he been capable of doing in the past?
Yeah.
For sure. And yeah, like you said, Pat, the patriarchal system is still there. They'll get another priest in. I mean, all right, that doesn't necessarily mean that the next priest will be a killer or a nonce, but 2% of them were. 2% of all clergy.
Right.
Over several decades, and the system that supported them is still there. So yeah, it does feel to me like he gets off easy. The true evil of the film, I think Fulci's telling us, is the church. He's just its agent.
Right.
I just have a quick thought too about his death, specifically that sequence. Didn't he use that sequence again in his next horror film, The Psychic?
In The Psychic in 1978, yes.
Okay.
Which is interesting because in Don't Torture a Duckling, he uses it in a very specific way, because you'll note that when he's falling down the cliff, it's actually a very poorly dressed up mannequin.
Yeah. Oh, clearly.
You'll also notice that after each boy has died, and when the corpse shows up, it's very clearly a mannequin.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something there about the masks we wear in society, and particularly the mask that he wore as the priest. That's what's being stripped off every time his face bashes off a rock. That mask of being this holy, this person that everyone should look up to and trust is being stripped away from him. Whereas in The Psychic, Fulci just did it because he likes how it turned out in Don't Torture a Duckling. he just thought that looked pretty cool, so I'll do it again.
It is memorable. It's incredible. And yes, you can so easily tell it's a dummy, but it's so memorable. The sparks and the just pieces of the face flying off.
Also, Fulci had to be very careful again at the time because of the trouble he was getting into. Because in his previous Giallo, Lived in a Woman's Skin in 1971, there's the infamous dog vivisection sequence, and where it's so realistic looking that Fulci and his special effects guy, Carlo Rambaldi, ended up in court over it. The Italian Animal Protection Society charged him and sent him to court, and Carlo Rambaldi had to actually bring these animatronic dog puppets in to show that they hadn't been killing real dogs. So after that, he had to be careful with just how good his special effects were for a couple of years. And by the way, interesting tidbit, the chap who created those special effects is the man who went on to create E.T.
Yep, Carlo Rambaldi, and he did the King Kong remake.
He did. He built the Alien for Alien from H.R. Giger's designs.
Right.
Won Oscars
also
for all three of them.
Wow. Possession, the octopus monster. So respect. I'm sorry to kind of go in a completely different direction, but this is just a question. It's a silly question, I'll admit, but between this and the New York Ripper, did Fulci have some sort of fascination with Donald Duck?
It is interesting, isn't it?
It is.
I don't fully know. Now, I know that with Don't Torture a Duckling, it was basically out of spite because they wanted to call the film "You Don't Torture Donald Duck," meaning you don't torture Donald Duck, so you don't torture a child, do you? But of course, with Disney being so very litigious, they knew full well they wouldn't get away with that. So they use the term paperino, which means duckling, but is also the term the Italians use to mean Donald Duck. So it's a way they could say Donald Duck without getting in trouble with Disney.
Fantastic.
As far as the guy's voice in New York Ripper, who knows? It could just be another thing of him thinking, actually, that's cool. That's cool. I'll do that. I don't know. I've never heard any
it's such a bizarre choice
of an explanation, isn't it? And I've never heard any even attempt of an explanation for that. And so I've never tried to put one on it myself.
So they
Fair
never
enough. It's just total curiosity on my part. I was like, is there anything on record about that? Because I was just curious.
They never
If
found
there is, I've not found it.
They've never found a Donald Duck costume after going through his things after he died
in his attic.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe that's why the costume designer had to redress him when he arrived at set, turning up in a Donald Duck outfit.
Oh man! Now I can just hope that's true, because that would be amazing. Anyway, was there anything anyone else wanted to bring up about the film itself before we move on?
I don't think so. Other than to just say it's my very favourite film in the entire world. Well, it's one of my two very favourite films by one of my two favourite directors. I've loved it since the first time I saw it. If there happens to be anyone out there who still hasn't seen it, change that. Change it quickly. It's and change it after having heard this conversation, so that you'll realise the subtleties and the complexities of this movie. For a director working in the quote unquote low genres, it's really quite an accomplishment.
Yeah. Now you just struck my curiosity. Who's the other director and what's the other film?
Couldn't be more different. It's David Lynch and Mulholland Drive.
Oh,
perfect.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. Big fan of David. I almost wore my David Lynch shirt. It's just a little chilly out here, so I put on my sweatshirt. But yeah, I almost wore my David Lynch shirt. That's fantastic.
Well, we'll have to have you on the show again to talk about it.
Yeah.
Please do. Love Lynch.
Oh, yeah.
I'll have a little anecdote for you. I won't spoil it now, but if you have me back on the show to talk about a Lynch film, I'll have a little anecdote for you.
Sweet.
I put Blue Velvet on the list after watching it again. Just thinking about kinds of movies that we could discuss for the show. After Lynch passed away, I don't normally just watch a whole filmography after someone dies or something, but I did with Lynch, because I realized I had only seen Mulholland Drive more than once. I had seen most of the other films, but I hadn't seen them more than once. So I watched them all again and was just so taken by all of them. And Blue Velvet really struck me as something that we could talk about in this format.
Definitely.
In ways that really surprised me. So let's go on to our holy pairings. What would you pair with Don't Torture a Duckling? What's something, one or two movies you would go with this?
One of them I've said multiple times before across multiple different forums, so I'll pick two this time. My first one, I mentioned earlier, Il Demonio, 1963, Brunello Rondi, a fantastic piece of neo-realist / folk horror / gothic horror, again about a woman, a witch, who is absolutely preyed upon by patriarchy. It's an incredible film that is still criminally underseen, because at the time of its release, it was thought to be so anti-Catholic that the Vatican and the Christian Democrat government came down on Rondi like a ton of bricks. Wow. To the point where it effectively killed his career. I mean, prior to that, he co-wrote La Dolce Vita for Federico Fellini. He was thought of as one of the great bright new things, and Il Demonio just killed his career stone dead. All he made after that was really low-rent erotic thrillers. But Il Demonio is a wonderful, wonderful film that everybody should see at least once.
I only recently saw that, and completely blew me away. I had heard about it in conjunction with The Exorcist, and so I was going to be on a show to talk about The Exorcist. So I thought, I'll give this a look, because it was on Criterion at the time, and fantastic, such a great movie, so underseen. I think it might be in Severin's first folk horror package. So if
it might
that's
very well. They re-released it last year on Blu-ray, or a standalone Blu-ray of it last year.
Fantastic. So yeah, definitely worth picking up if this has struck any interest from you at all that I would co-sign with Matt on that movie.
Okay, I'll watch it after they're done. Okay, I haven't seen it. I'll get on it as soon as we're done recording.
Sounds good.
Run, don't walk.
All right.
And my second choice would be Pupi Avati's 1976 Giallo, The House with Laughing Windows. It's another Giallo that breaks away from the norm. It breaks away from the kind of homogenous template that Dario Argento popularized after Mario Bava invented. It's very rural. It's set in a rural province in the north of Italy. It does have a religious element. It involves a painter coming in to restore an old fresco in a church. And there's lots of secrets in the village about this old fresco. The priest and the villagers want this fresco left alone for very, very dark reasons. It's a cracking film. It's my favourite film from my year of my birth. Love it to bits. House with Laughing Windows. It's just been re-released by Arrow on 4K. Yeah.
That's what I heard. I actually, a couple years ago, because I was looking for movies about artists that were horror movies, and someone recommended that to me. And so I bought a crusty DVD that I found somewhere, but I haven't watched it yet, unfortunately. I need to give that one a look.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible.
All right. Patrick.
You should probably go next. Mine is real dumb. Real dumb.
I've created two options. I created one that was like the really depressing triple feature, and then the one that's sort of fun and dumb. So I'm going to tell you what the depressing one would be, but I'm not going to talk about it. So I was going to pair it with Doubt, Meryl Streep and Philip Seymour Hoffman movie, and Spotlight. And I think those would be appropriate, but that would be a real bummer of a triple feature. So I'm going to go with, instead, Body Double, because the sort of modern home that Patricia has sort of reminded me of that place in Body Double. Mm-hmm. And also the influence of Giallo is pretty heavy on that movie. I gotta admit, it's not
on his entire career.
Right? Yes, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I gotta admit, it's not a movie I love, but I find it kind of intriguing anyway. And ideas of doppelgangers and stuff are sort of fascinating. Mm-hmm. But the other one that I think is interesting is Silver Bullet. The Stephen King werewolf movie, where you have, a bunch of people getting killed, and in the end, it turns out to be the priest. That's the only connection, really. But I thought, why not? Let's give that a try. So you could. So I guess I'm giving an option. You can go depressing, or you can go kind of dumb, whichever you prefer. And so
I prefer to go full dumb.
Oh, okay. So let's hear yours, Pat.
These are all very good choices that you've presented, and there's a lot of thought put into them, and I appreciate that. But really, there's only one proper answer, and it is the film Howard the Duck. And if we really want to get done with it, we could make a shit sandwich and have The Mighty Ducks, and then Don't Torture the Duckling. Not that it's shit, but just it's bitter, tastes awful. And then Howard the Duck. So, I'm sorry.
You should be.
That's well said. Well said. Okay.
Or we could do Howard the Duck and the other film that filmmaking team made, which was Messiah of Evil, which I think is absolutely crazy.
Yeah. That's a good one. So Matt, we thank you for your thoughtful pairings, and we apologize for ours. So anyway, let's do our ratings. as far as our holy scale, what's our thoughts on how we would rate this as in terms of provoking discussion of religious and faith topics? What do you think? Matt, do you have a thought on that?
I've been going back and forth on it between 3.5 and 4 stars out of 5. I think I'll go for the 4 because not only have you got the discussion of the culture clash between the old folk traditional religions and modern Catholicism, you've also got the fact that Fulci is exploring his apostasy through his work.
Yes.
He's exploring his own feelings about his church and his faith through the work, and I think that's really powerful.
I agree. I'm actually the same way. Rating, I give it a 4 for that.
Samesies.
Well. Yeah, good. I think this is a really solid discussion movie for our format for sure. How about as a horror movie? I know it's Giallo, so it's horror adjacent, I guess. But what do you think, guys?
Yeah, it's. Sorry, go on.
I've 3.5, I think, personally.
I'd agree with that. I'd say 3 to 3.5 because technically it isn't a horror film. It's a Giallo. It's horror adjacent. The majority of the killings happen off screen, although the one that does happen on screen is particularly brutal and horrific.
Yeah.
I'd go 3.5.
Yeah, same. Let's go 3.5.
We're
I think that's a
aligned
good.
again.
It's like, hey, we're all in agreement so far. Okay, overall rating. I think I know what Matt's is going to be. Because
5 out of 5. Favorite
Yeah.
movie. It's
Yeah.
not only is it my favorite movie, it is for me. It's one of the 2 very best Gialli ever made. Precisely because he takes what had become quite a homogenized template at the time, and with his own skill as a filmmaker, he managed to make a Giallo while simultaneously subverting every single trope of the Giallo in it. So instead of it being set at night all the time, most of it happens during the day. Instead of it being set in a cosmopolitan city, it's out in the rural back of beyond. You do have a killer all dressed in black. Just very different black to the black gloved, black trench coat killer we're usually used to. And instead of the kind of destruction of beauty with the killer killing women for having the temerity to beat women, you've got the killer going after, it's the destruction of innocence instead. So yeah, 5 out of 5 for me.
Yeah. You can't just leave that out there. What's the other Giallo? That is the other greatest Giallo.
Oh, Blood and Black Lace.
Yeah.
Mario Bava's.
We're with you on that. Yeah.
I love that movie.
I mean,
Love
obviously,
that movie.
he started it with The Girl Who Knew Too Much, but Blood and Black Lace was the one where he fully codified the template. And I still watch it every year, and it still feels fresh to me every time I watch it. It's an incredible movie.
One of my favorite things I've ever written was a retrospective of that movie. And yeah.
Ooh, send me a link. I'd love to read that.
Oh gosh, okay.
Sounds good. So Pat, what is your rating?
I think at the time I gave it 4.5 out of 5, but it could easily be 5. I mean, it's just yeah. I don't have any extra to say really. It's all been said.
Sounds good. I for now have given it a 4 which means it's a great film. To me, that's my Letterboxd rankings. Sometimes I feel like are pretty tough. Sometimes I'm a tough grader, but it means it's a great film, and it has, to me, the potential to become a personal favorite, which puts it into the 4.5, 5 category for me. But so yeah, I loved this on this viewing. I mean, I realized kind of how boneheaded I was the first time I watched it, just not really understanding what Fulci was trying to do. I hadn't really found my connection with Fulci yet the first time I watched this, but I've since, I've revisited a couple of his movies. I revisited The Beyond not too long ago and was just like, oh man, this is incredible. And again, it was a movie that I sort of was like, oh, okay. And now it's like, Okay, I get
Yeah.
it. I get it. This is fantastic. So,
Yeah, he's as much as I love his early horror movies, I think they're wonderful, and they start a whole new subgenre of this kind of plotless surreal horror. It's around this period where he was really at the height of his political powers, and I would urge anyone to go and see any of his films from this period, from Beatrice Cenci in 1969 to this and The Eroticist, both from 1972. Incredible, very, very heavily political, but still entertaining genre movies.
Excellent. So, again, Matt, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us about this film and about Fulci in general. I'm sure we will have you back to do more, because this was terrific conversation, if you would like, it should say.
I would love to. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
It's been wonderful to talk about my favorite film specifically in this way, specifically in this frame. So yeah, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Is there anything that you'd like to plug in particular? I know you've got a lot going on right now. It seems like every time I go on Instagram, you've got something you're sharing, and that's exciting.
Do you know what? Burnout is just about around the corner.
Oh no! Oh no!
I've had a very, very busy 18 months. Fulci's Inferno. If anyone's enjoyed this conversation, please pick up Fulci's Inferno, Faith in the Films of a Horror and Giallo Auteur. It discusses Fulci's entire life and career through a lens of his faith and his feelings about his church. It also discusses the wider implications of faith and church on Italian filmmaking in general, but mostly about the through line that goes through Fulci's entire work about his faith. It was an absolute labour of love. It took years to research and write, and no matter what I write in the future, it will always be Fulci's Inferno that I'm most proud of.
Oh wow!
Nice.
Yeah. I'm not, like I
published
said,
by McFarland and Co. Available everywhere you get your books.
Yes. And like I said, it's on my read list like very soon. Now that I'm becoming more familiar with Fulci, I think I feel more comfortable diving into it now, because I felt like how much do I really know to be able to take this in? But I'm really looking forward to reading it. And like I said, Vatican versus horror movies, primo, absolutely fantastic book. Please
Thank you so much.
Pick that one up as well, and also Darkest Margins. Really impressive stuff. And also, hey, you've written a piece for Manor Vellum, and so we want to plug that as well.
Yes, yeah, I wrote a piece that came out on Friday the 13th of April, which was the 30th year anniversary of Fulci's passing.
Yeah, so that's a great piece. You can go to manorvellum.com and look up Matt Rogerson.
March, Friday the 13th of March, sorry.
In March, okay, yeah. Or just scroll through there and you will most certainly find that piece. Speaking of Manor Vellum, I now have my latest piece on Faces of Frankenstein is now available there. It's called In Stitches, Frankenstein Parodies of the Modern Era. It covers the comedies like just after Young Frankenstein up to 1999. Includes some favorites like The Man with Two Brains and Frankenhooker, along with some of the worst movies I've ever seen. But hey, I'm devoted to this project and seeing everything I possibly can, and it's been fun. I actually really do. I mean, it just goes to show how much I love Frankenstein that I sat through the Turkish Young Frankenstein, Frankenstein's Great Aunt Tilly, and Rock and Roll Frankenstein.
Wild.
So, anyway, how about you, Pat? Anything that you wanted to share, or any updates on our YouTube channel or anything like that?
We have YouTube.
To talk about?
We have YouTube.
We have YouTube.
We're posting all of our episodes and putting out shorts. I'm not really writing right now. I'm kind of focusing on the show and my family.
Oh man, damn wiener kids.
And my damn wiener kids, yeah. But I don't know.
And getting settled in your new digs and everything.
Getting settled
like
in
that.
the new digs, and I might be working on a book too. That's taking a lot of time to research, but
I might be too, but it's going very slowly.
They have a tendency to do that, don't they?
Yeah. I have.
It's a big undertaking.
I have piles of books to my left here, for this book, but I've made it through very little.
Yeah, like I know that if you look at my Instagram, you see 3 books coming out in the space of a year, but
yeah,
I was working on them for in the region of a decade.
Right.
I don't feel bad then.
Yeah. I saw that and I was like, okay, that makes me feel better. When I saw, it's like I've been researching this for 7 years and I wrote it for 2 and now it's out.
Accidentally prolific.
Yeah. Accidentally prolific. That is one of my favorite phrases that I've heard. So again, thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you.
And we definitely would love to have you on again. Also, thank you to our sponsor, Manor, and thank you very much for listening. And until next time, remember, if you don't pay, you can't watch.
And that concludes another episode of Holy Terrors. Thank you so much for listening to our humble little podcast. If you'd like to support the show, please drop us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you want to follow us on social media, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Bluesky by searching Holy Terrors Podcast. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.